VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
We do thank you for joining us on Crosstalk. And friends, today we're addressing the socialist Islamic wave that's advancing across our country. It's also been referred to as the red-green axis to describe both the far left or progressive or socialistic political movement, that would be the red, and the advancement of Islam, that would be the green. The Washington Times reported yesterday, quote, all three candidates endorsed by New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani won primary elections Tuesday in a sweep that cements the Democratic Party's lurch towards socialism. It's been called a stunning upset. And it's not only New York. Mai Vang of Sacramento, who turned her back on the U.S. flag and refused to say the Pledge of Allegiance at council meetings, has also won a spot on the November ballot in California's 7th Congressional District. Representative Ro Khanna of California said, quote, some have criticized my supporting of progressive insurgents. Tonight shows we have a new party. The Washington Examiner called Tuesday's election a big win for socialists. The Washington Free Beacon wrote, chill of collectivism spreads. And MyCharisma.com reported over the past year, the Democratic Socialists have become an alarmingly powerful force in U.S. politics. And the Post-Millennial reported, white Brooklyn socialists tell Hakeem Jeffries they will oust him next. And ladies and gentlemen, when you combine this with the Islamic agenda, there is indeed trouble ahead for a freedom-loving constitutional republic. And sadly, the vast majority of the American people appear to have their arms spread wide open to receive this very gift of a Trojan horse. Joining us today, we welcome back William J. Federer, nationally known speaker, historian, author, and president of AmeriSearch. He is speaker on the American Minute, authored numerous books like America's God and Country Encyclopedia of Quotations, Socialism, The Real History from Plato to the Present, Silence Equals Consent, The Sin of Omission, and also What Every American Needs to Know About the Quran. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, Jim, great to be with you.
Bill, I think just to set the foundation, because when we mention the term Democratic Socialist, there are many who don't know who this group is or what they stand for. So I just want to read from their platform, and then we'll take off and have you comment on all this. But looking at their platform, which they have posted on the web, they support Medicare for all, universal health care with no premiums, copays, or deductibles, guarantees for reproductive and gender-affirming care. They want to end the war on drugs, and that is to treat drug addiction as a health issue, not a criminal one. Fight mass incarceration and police brutality, abolish mandatory minimums and cash bail, and demilitarize police departments. College for all, make all public higher education tuition-free with no out-of-pocket cost for room and board, and cancel all student loan debt. Housing for all, establish universal rent control and the guaranteed right to counsel for all tenants. Public investment in building quality multi-income social housing. Support working families, expansive paid family leave for all workers, and free public universal child care and pre-K. I'm just continuing on the economy, a 32-hour work week with no reduction in pay or benefits, union power to protect all workers' rights to strike and form a union, make it easier for workers to join unions, and invest in the National Labor Relations Board, the Green New Deal, a massive public investment to transition away from fossil fuels toward a green and sustainable economy, guaranteed support for workers in the fossil fuel industry, massive infrastructure and jobs programs, and public ownership over major transportation and energy infrastructure and natural resources. Tax the rich, raise taxes on the richest earners, for-profit corporations, large inheritances, and private colleges and universities. Establish a wealth tax for the wealthiest in society. On other issues, free Palestine, an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, an end to military and economic aid and weapon sales to Israel, respect to the authority of the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice, and national sovereignty for the Palestinian people. End the U.S. war machine, greatly reduce the U.S. military budget, close overseas bases, and bring troops home. Freedom of movement, allow workers to freely migrate between countries to seek employment without restrictive immigration controls, demilitarize the border, and end immigrant detention and deportations, immediate amnesty for all immigrants regardless of current immigration status, and provide access to jobs, labor rights, and social services to all immigrants. No more economic warfare and economic sanctions that impact the sovereignty of countries whose governments act independently of the United States, such as Cuba, Venezuela, and Iran. Universal suffrage, extend full voting rights to people with criminal convictions and non-citizens, and establish statehood for Washington, D.C. Replace the two-party system with a multi-party democracy through proportional representation elections. Expand the number of seats in the House of Representatives and end the Senate filibuster. They also have limit the court's power, the Supreme Court, limit their power of judicial review, which it is used to effectively create and abolish laws outside the legislative process, and replace the Electoral College with a national popular vote for president. Bill, we could talk for hours just on those points alone, but that is a platform. For those who hear the term democratic socialist, this is a platform. This is their motivation for the country. But woe be to a freedom-loving constitutional republic. Your response?
Yeah, well, they'll say anything until you give up the power, and then they're just going to put in globalism and make you a slave. It is... Europe is, my daughter years ago worked for Bayer Pharmaceutical in Germany, 100,000 employees. And the company, and she takes over, and there's people that have been missing work for a year, and they would call and say that they did not get their annual raise. And she's like, talk to legal department. It's like, wow. Here are these guys. Once you hire somebody, the socialist system is you can never fire them. So here are all these people, and they don't do any work, and yet they expect to get an annual raise. And so Europe's basically going bankrupt. But, one of the things that you see is that all of that you just described is a transition phase to Islam. And so Europe has gone from a Judeo-Christian Europe to a secular socialist Europe, and now it's becoming an Islamic Europe, with Muhammad being the number one name for newborns. So it all sounds good, but then when you realize that it's like a child holding a kitchen knife. You will tell the child anything to get him to put the knife down. Once the knife's down, all bets are off. Forget it. You spank the kid. It's like they'll tell you, we'll give you this, we'll give you free this, free that, free it. Just vote us in. We'll give you free everything. Yeah. And you're like, really? And if you're naive enough to believe them and you vote them in, they're like, okay, we lied to you. You're not going to get any of it. And we're now in charge, and we're going to rule as dictators. And all you have to do is look at every single example in history. That's exactly what happened. I talked to somebody from Cuba, and they said, when Castro was running for office, he promised everybody everything. And, Rafael Cruz is a friend of mine. I was with him not too long ago. Matter of fact, I was with Ted Cruz like 3 weeks ago. Rafael talks about being in Cuba, and Castro promised everything. And then once he gets in power, he became the billionaire, and everybody else in the country is poor. That's the way it works. Like Erdogan in Turkey, where he said democracy is like a train. You get off once you've reached your destination. So what does he mean? He says you do all the democracy stuff until you get in power. Once you're in power, you stay in power, and you rule as a dictator. And since you're in charge, you can arrest all your opponents. You can have them accused of bogus crimes, and then they are not allowed to defend themselves. And so it is a bait and switch. In America, it began with Germans coming over in the 1800s. And we had the fastest growth in the standard of living in human history. It's called the Industrial Revolution. We had railroads, steamboats, indoor plumbing, no more outhouses. We had washing machines. Basically, the Industrial Revolution freed up women from doing these tedious tasks every day. And so we had the standard of living. But in Germany, you had Karl Marx and a class struggle. And these German immigrants came to America, and they're working in factories. And they bring over, so the first unions in America were founded by these German immigrants. And they would advocate taking from the rich and redistributing. And so they pushed for the first income tax in America. And then finally the rich caved and agreed to an income tax, and they just created tax-free foundations so they didn't get taxed anyway. But the situation was the Pullman Railroad Car Company in Chicago. And they, George Pullman, had the factory, and then he built a neighborhood around the factory so the workers wouldn't have to travel long distances. And then he built stores in the neighborhood, and then he even paid the people with company script so they could just cash in, go to the store, and just say, hey, put it to my credit, you know. And it was a little workers' utopia until the price of railroad cars fell. There was an economic downturn, and the company couldn't afford to keep going. And Eugene Debs organizes riots, and the unions destroy $80 million worth of railroad cars in 27 different states.
Wow.
Because they weren't paying what they used to because of this economic downturn. Eugene Debs is put in jail, and he reads through Karl Marx's book over and over and over again until he has it memorized. And he gets out, and he's organizing some more riots amongst these workers who are mostly immigrants at this time. Grover Cleveland is running for re-election, and he decides to build the Statue of Liberty to try to clean up his image amongst the immigrants. And he institutes the Labor Day, but he doesn't do it on May 1st. That was the International Workers' Day. But he does it on the first Monday in September. And so that's the history of Labor Day. Wow. But in Chicago, these workers rioted, the Chicago Haymarket riot, and they blew up bombs and they killed people. And so Eugene Debs is put in jail. When he gets out, he forms the Social Democracy Party in America, 1897. And then he forms the Socialist Democratic Party of America, 1898. And then he forms the Socialist Party of America in 1901. Eugene Debs ran for president 5 times between 1900 and 1920, gets 0 electoral votes. World War I starts. He resists the draft, along with Roger Baldwin, founder of the ACLU. Baldwin says, I am for socialism and communism is the goal. Eugene Debs is studied by Vladimir Lenin.
Wow.
And so Lenin models his Bolshevik revolution off of Eugene Debs. And they overthrow the Tsar. They kill an estimated 12 million people over there. Lenin cited Debs in an open letter, January 27, 1918. And this is Lenin writing. Look at America, apart from everything else, a neutral country. Haven't we the beginnings of a split there, too? Eugene Debs, the American rebel, declares in the socialist press that he recognizes only one type of war, civil war, for the victory of socialism.
We'll be back in just 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, Creation Seminar speaker at the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, any evidence for creation from the solar system?
Yes, there are, Chris. In fact, quite a few. One of the ICR physicists, Dr. Russ Humphreys, made a prediction a few years ago before the exploration of Jupiter by satellite. He had developed a theory of the magnetic field of planets in the solar system based on the Bible. And the satellite found the evidence fit his model and not the evolutionary model of long ages. In particular, Europa, one of the moons of Jupiter, has an Earth-like magnetic field, but it's tilted 80 degrees away from the spin axis. This pretty much proves that the magnetic field is not produced by fluid currents in the moon's interior, as is postulated by long-agers for Earth. As a matter of fact, the Earth's dipole magnetic field is decaying so fast, soon it's going to be gone. It couldn't be the result of events millions of years ago, and that's the Back to Genesis truth.
Thanks for tuning in to Back to Genesis.
Friends, you're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America, and there is a wave that is coming across this country. It's a socialist Islamic wave. Yes, you take the principles of socialism, you add Islam to it, and that's exactly what we are seeing take place. I mean, look what is going afoot right now in not only New York City. Many were stunned by the mayoral election that happened there, but now this past Tuesday, the election fallout that's taken place there. It could be that a Democratic Socialist also takes charge over Los Angeles, California, and in other locations, and the number of candidates just on the increase all across this nation. We're talking with William J. Federer today and helping us understand further this socialist Islamic wave that we're seeing today by looking at its roots and seeing it coming into fruition today. We'll also be sharing with you some quotes from senators here in just the last couple of days as well as it relates to this matter. But, Bill, pick up where you left off there as to the development of this Democratic Socialist of America.
Right. So Eugene Debs, who organizes this railroad strike, is put in prison. He comes out and he starts the Socialist Party of America. He runs for president 5 times between 1900 and 1920. And, we get up to World War II. And World War II has Franklin Roosevelt. And Franklin Roosevelt makes a treaty with Stalin. And so that's when the U.S. Socialist Party and the U.S. Communist Party decide, why should we run our own candidates for president? Let's just support the Democrats. And so they began to infiltrate the Democrat Party. Bernie Sanders had a portrait of Eugene Debs hanging in the City Hall of Burlington, Vermont, and had a plaque dedicated to him in his congressional office. But again, Eugene Debs inspired Vladimir Lenin over there in Russia. And so you have people like Zell Miller, who was the last pro-life Democrat senator. In an interview on his book, Deficit of Decency 25, he says, unfortunately, the National Democratic Party has lost its way. They've been taken over by very liberal, left-wing, leaning special interest groups that you have here in Washington. So here's this famous Democrat senator saying his own party has been taken over. And you have Ronald Reagan. He said, I didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left me. What's he talking about? The Democrat Party was infiltrated by the Socialist Party, which was started by Eugene Debs, who inspired Lenin, who organized this railroad strike in the 1880s and so forth. And then in Chicago, you have the place where they had their Haymarket riot, a statue, and that's where the Weathermen Underground blow up the statue, and that's Bill Ayers. And the Weathermen Underground, these Vietnam War era radicals, Bill Ayers launched the political career of Barack Obama. And Bill Ayers said, I'm a radical leftist, small C communist. Another of the Weathermen Underground was Eric Mann, and he trained Patrisse Cullors, who started Black Lives Matter. So we're seeing this, Patrisse Cullors says, myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. Wow. What's the Marxist idea? Is where you create a crisis and people panic and surrender their freedoms to the state. And so that's the goal. They want to create a crisis and then come along and say, give all your freedoms to the government and we promise to take care of you. But once you give them up, it's over.
Yeah. You know, this is amazing. And just, this big tent and how they've hijacked the Democratic Socialists, hijacking the Democratic Party, so to speak. But I just want to play a recent clip here from Senator Cory Booker, because he was just on CNN and he was asked about a comment that Senator Fetterman made about these candidates and so forth. Let's listen to the clip.
Given that, what did you make of your fellow Democratic Senator John Fetterman today when he was asked about these New York primaries? He said the dirtbag left is surging, I believe is how he described it.
Again, for me, if you want to heal a country, you can't be picking fights. I think we need to understand that our party is not homogenous. one of the things that makes the Democratic Party great is it's a big tent party. We need to stay that way. The focus has got to be the November election.
Oh, it's got to be the November election, Bill. I mean, big tent party. It doesn't matter if they're coming in with these radical ideas.
Yeah, and it's interesting how they've split the Republican Party with the same tactics. You know, after the Cold War, you had countries in Europe wanted to be free, and they would form republics and elect leaders, and the Soviets didn't like that. So they would send in agents to do critical theory where they would observe all the groups, ethnic groups, Bosnians, Croats, Serbs, religious groups, Sunni, Shia, Orthodox, and Catholic, economic groups, racial groups, it didn't matter, and they would categorize them as victims and oppressors, haves and have-nots. And then they would pit the groups against each other to create riots and ideally bloodshed. Why bloodshed? Because then people want to blame somebody. There's killing, we got to blame somebody. Then they call up the media to blame the new leader of the new country. And when people believe the media, his popularity falls, and they can do a coup or a rigged election, and nobody questions it because by this time nobody likes the leader, and they install a Soviet puppet. And country after country fell. It's called Behind the Iron Curtain. Truman does nothing because he thinks the United Nations he helped form will bring world peace. But then the next president's Eisenhower, and when the country of Iran begins to side with the Soviet Union, he does the KGB thing in reverse. It's called Operation Ajax, and we send over Kermit Roosevelt Jr., the grandson of Teddy Roosevelt, and he's an expert in foreign languages, and he does the critical theory and finds the disgruntled groups, and he organizes protests and riots. They co-opt the media. They blame Mossadegh, and when his popularity falls, they put him under house arrest and replace him with the Shah, who loved America until Jimmy Carter got rid of him. And Jimmy Carter brought in the Ayatollah, and that's a whole other program there.
Right.
But this idea of going into countries, breaking them into groups and pitting them against each other, that's what they were doing in America. In the 1950s, the Hollywood was the influencers, and they would invite the Hollywood producer to their parties and feed them with divisive messages. Vietnam War is bad. Capitalists are bad, and they would put it into their movies and spread it to all the people that saw the movies because their goal is a radical left and a radical right that they could pit against each other, and in the confusion, blame the leader and do their coup. And Obama specifically turned all these CIA tactics we were doing in other countries on our own soil with the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act and the Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act, and with the executive order using behavioral science insights for the benefit of the American people. Obama turned all these tools the CIA was using to keep countries from going into the communist orbit. He turns them inward on America for his own political purposes.
Wow.
And then we look at the dividing. So Charlie Kirk was a friend of mine. I knew him for 10 years, and his message was what? Put Jesus first, get married, have kids, save the country. Well, they found out after they killed him, right, that who did Charlie platform? Well, some very famous podcasters. And so they do these what's called influence campaigns where they befriend them and they know all their friends and they invite them and they feed them with divisive messaging. It's called controversy media. And they take the enthusiasm that Charlie had to win the election, chase the ballots, and they diffuse that into this controversy media. And these podcasters do not care about the elections. One of them recently came out and said he's left the Republican Party. Another one says, I'm not going to vote in this midterm. What a great message to give Charlie Kirk's followers. Don't vote. It's like this is like the opposite of what Charlie would have wanted. But this is intentional. They want to have the Republicans lose the midterms. People forget the whole anti-Zionist agenda was created by the Soviet Union in 1964 by Yuri Andropov, and he's the one that came up with anti-Zionism. There's always been anti-Semitism, but anti-Zionism was a Soviet creation to specifically divide the Middle East so it would not side with America. Yuri Andropov recruited Yasser Arafat, put him through KGB training, began associating Zionism, with Nazism, with apartheidism. And Yuri Andropov created the term Palestinian. Prior to him, Palestine was the homeland of the Jews. I mean, even in the 1950s, there was the United Palestine Appeal, led by Rabbi Stephen Wise. There's even letters, through the 30s and 40s of Franklin Roosevelt writing letters to the United Palestine Appeal saying, America supports the Jews going back to Palestine, their home where they had been kicked out of for thousands of years ago, and they've been wandering around since. And it wasn't until Yuri Andropov. So you have 1960s, Golda Meir is talking to Nixon, and she says, when was there a Palestinian people and a Palestinian state? He says, it wasn't like there were. He says, before the Jews were there, it was the Ottoman Empire, right? It was part of Jordan, maybe southern Syria, but there was no Palestinian kingdom. For 700 years, it was the Ottoman Empire. And so this was an invention that they've sold. It's a Soviet psyop.
Yeah.
And then they introduced it into the United Nations and took it global. So they've taken from the river to the sea and repackaged it for Republicans with this anti-Zionism message. Their goal is to get the conservatives to fight amongst themselves so they won't vote and have, believe it or not, get half the conservatives to side with the Ayatollah to get rid of Israel. And
Right.
once Israel is gone, they can reestablish the caliphate, which is their one world Islamic government. Everything that had been under Islamic control, they think of it as a crescent, starts with Turkey, goes through the Middle East, Iran, comes back through North Africa. They want to unite all that, but there's one little country standing in the way, Israel. And if they can get rid of Israel, they can reestablish the caliphate, and that'll energize them. And if you thought Mandami energized the Muslims, if they could get rid of Israel, it will be total 100% Islamic enthusiasm to take over the world.
And friends, that's where this red-green axis all comes together. You know, from the socialism and Islam, Bill, they're working hand in glove, and yet we have so many that are just blinded to what this is going on because of all the free things and building that division and again, as you mentioned, the hatred against Israel, and that is all part of the plan here for the total disruption of what our nation stands for and how it was founded.
Yeah, if America was gone, it would be a gang war between Russian dictators, Chinese dictators, North Korean dictators, Iranian Ayatollah dictators, Turkish Erdogan dictator, right? It would be a gang war, and human rights would be crushed. America is holding back this globalist gang warfare, and Trump is at the forefront. Trump is not a globalist. He wants to make America great again, and that's why they hate him, and they want to try to kneecap his agenda with all these liberal judges and so forth. But we have to realize that the world is at stake here, and so one of the books that I put together on socialism, I go through these tactics, and it's based on Sigmund Freud. And he studied group psychology.
Tell you what, Bill, I'm going to have to let me just stop you right there because we're just getting into that. And friends, we'll tell you also, we're up against a break, but we'll tell you about socialism. We'll also share how you can get a copy of Bill's book on socialism from VCY. We've interviewed him several times on this topic, and friends, we're seeing the things that he has unfolded in his book come to fruition here in our present society today, under the likes of the Democratic Socialists of America. We'll have more to say after the break. This is Crosstalk on VCY.
Are you aware of past crises when America's fate hung desperately in the balance? The French and Indian War, the Revolution, the Civil War, and in other national events. Leaders in our country called the nation to prayer. In the book, Miracles in American History, author Susie Federer recounts 32 amazing stories of answered prayer. Read about events like the winter at Valley Forge, the Boston Tea Party, dense fog that appeared allowing 8,000 troops to escape, the Star-Spangled Banner, and other events where prayer had an impact. You'll also learn when Apollo 13 was lost in space and what happened after the president called the nation to prayer. Volume 1 of Miracles in American History is available for a donation of $20, or Volumes 1 and 2 with additional stories for a donation of $35. Call 1-800-729-9829.
Bill Federer is with us here today on Crosstalk, and just before Bill comes back with us here, he has put together a couple of stellar books that really inform you on these critical issues. One of them is Socialism, that takes you, gives you the real history from Plato to the present. It's over 275 pages. He tracks the origins of socialism and really reveals how the deep state capitalizes on crises to consolidate control. And it really gets into its full background. You'll see the communist goals that are laid out in this book as well. And friends, if you'd like to receive a copy of this, we have it available. Our way of saying thank you for your support of $20 or more here to Crosstalk. In addition, he has also put out a book that we've talked about, What Every American Needs to Know About the Quran. And takes us back to, even, for instance, Keith Ellison, the first Muslim elected to the U.S. Congress. He took his oath of office on the Quran. And we know that most Americans know very little about the Quran and how Islam is spread. But Bill follows Muhammad's death and the followers of Islam, how their mission to conquer many nations. And it's all exposed, what every American needs to know about the Quran. As Islam advances across our country, the book is a wake-up call for every American to be vigilant. This book also available for donation of $20. If you'd like to receive either of these books or both, you can reach out to our switchboard today, 1-800-729-9829. That's 1-800-729-9829. You'll also find them also on our Crosstalk store, so to speak. Your gifts help support the ministry of Crosstalk, but at crosstalkamerica.com. Bill, you were just starting to get into that, the matter of socialism, and I think it's important. But before we do it, let's hear one other audio clip here, and this is Senator Lisa Blunt, who was just on CNBC, and she was posed with the question, where has socialism ever worked? Let's listen to how that interview went.
Where has socialism ever worked, Senator?
Is that another question, or is that for the next interview?
That's definitely for you. You said fish doesn't work everywhere. I just want to know one place where socialism has been beneficial.
Well, when you have me come back on, we can talk about all the races across the country.
Okay, she's punting on that one, Bill. Where has socialism ever worked? It hasn't, has it?
So socialism is a bait and switch for dictatorship. It promises heaven, delivers hell. And the best person that can describe it is Lenin. And he said socialism is a transition phase from capitalism to communism.
Wow.
So capitalism is private ownership of property. Communism is no private ownership of property. The Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, says the theory of communism may be summed up in a single sentence: abolition of private property. And so if you give up all your property, the question is, who gets to decide who gets what? I mean, there's a house there. Who gets to live in that house? Somebody has to decide who gets in the house. So wherever there is the government owning everything, somebody in the government decides who gets what, and they are human, and they will always be tempted to give nicer stuff to their family and friends and dumpier stuff to people they don't like, and then weaponize the government against their political enemies, and it turns into a elite, deep state ruling class with the most corrupt guy at the top, a dictator. So it's discretionary. The saying is, he who holds the purse strings has the power.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't need to be your money, but if you're holding the purse strings and you're sitting on the pile of cash and you decide who gets what, you're basically in power using somebody else's money, and the temptation is to benefit your friends and weaponize against your enemies. And that's the definition of a dictator. And so it's a hierarchical system. If you're friends with a dictator king, you are more equal. If you're not their friends, you're less equal. And if you're their enemy, you're dead. It's called treason, or you're a slave. And
Bill,
so that's the norm.
Shouldn't this be a wake-up call, though? Because so many of these individuals falling under that label, Democratic Socialists, actually hate our country. They hate our country. As I mentioned, the one individual in California just turning their back to the United States flag as the pledge is recited and refuses to say the pledge. There is also one of the candidates who just won in New York. Chevalier is the last name, a Democratic Socialist who talked about saying, "I forgot to get napkins, so I just wiped my hand on the American flag behind me." Just using it as a rag to wipe her dirty hands. There are those who just really despise our nation, but they're running to take control of our nation.
Yeah, and the irony is that once the socialists and communists take over, they're the first ones that get killed. There's one of the communist writers, I think his name was Yuri Bezmenov, and he talked about how when the communists took over Cuba, all the people that were advocating, social ownership of this, and everybody will have free health care, and everybody will have free education, everybody will have free, apartments and free housing, and free. Mm-hmm. And then when the communists took over and they didn't deliver, it was those people that turned into enemies of the new Communist Party because they felt betrayed, and so they would organize against them. And so the communists said they learned their lesson, and so the people that advocate the most for communism, as soon as they get in power, they immediately kill them.
Wow!
Because here they were building a following that were following them, leaning toward the communism. And when communism didn't deliver, they still have their followers, and their temptation is to get their followers to then go against the communism, and the communists don't like that, so they kill them. So here, all these voices that are championing social ownership and free education and free welfare and free health, all those voices will be the first ones silenced.
Bill,
once they get in power.
It's interesting too. Talking about free this and free that, and Zoran Mamdani talked about providing free bus transportation, and he used Kansas City, Missouri as an example. And just I think it was Tuesday of this week, Bloomberg reported Kansas City, Missouri has ended experiment to provide free bus services to the people in the city, and now are going to begin charging riders. They started this because, hey, this is going to be cost-saving to give free bus rides. It's going to make ridership more equitable. But, Bill, they're losing millions of dollars in all of this, some $15 million a year, and that's nearly double the initial projections, and they're having to give up that free bus program system. And here we have, even in New York City, talking about city-owned grocery stores and free bus transportation and free child care, and so much to lure people in to get those free things. But really it is putting one's hand into a mousetrap.
Yeah, it's interesting. Free grocery stores will put all the other grocery stores out of business. So grocery stores operate on a very small margin of profit. You buy this stuff and you can mark it up just a tiny bit, and you sell the stuff, and they make a very tiny bit. If you can give away free stuff down the block, and you lose a percentage of your customer base, then all the other grocery stores in New York are going to go bankrupt. And that's the goal, is they want to put out of business. I did a series of articles on Ayatollah and Iran, and they had, before Jimmy Carter, you had the Shah. Mm-hmm. The Shah of Iran loved America. They had the 8th fastest growing economy in the world. He was a secular leader. He let women get educated. He let women wear fashions. They built the Cadillac Seville over in Iran. If you looked at pictures, it looks exactly like Southern California. I mean, it looks like, but the Shah wanted to be nice. And so he let people express their views. And since Iran was close to Russia, the Russians began to go onto college campuses and get these students to be unhappy with the Shah, saying that he's an American and he's a capitalist and he's got all this money and he's bad, bad, bad. And they would get these young people to organize protests against the Shah. And the protests kept getting bigger and bigger. And can you imagine college kids getting swept up in this type of thing? Well, once the American ambassador, William Sullivan, was over there, and he saw these young people organizing these socialist riots against the Shah, William Sullivan tells Jimmy Carter he's going to get voted out, and they're going to put in a pro-Soviet leader. And Jimmy Carter panics. And Jimmy Carter begins to correspond with the Ayatollah, who's a radical Muslim exiled in Paris. And the Ayatollah tells Jimmy Carter, if you let me take over Iran, I won't be friends with the Soviets, and I'll keep relations with America the same. And Jimmy Carter, just a naive peanut farmer, he says, okay. So he pressures the Shah to leave Iran in 1979. He tells our military to stand down. He lets the Ayatollah land his plane. He goes to the capital. He rounds up all the generals that are pro-American and executes them on the roof of a high school. And then he says, calls America the great Satan, decides to chant death to America. And Jimmy Carter realized that he was just duped. And the Ayatollah kills all those young people that were protesting the Shah. And it's you can go online, you can look at these articles, and these young people are like dumbfounded. They're like, we helped you get in power. We helped get rid of the Shah. We're the ones that you should be thankful for. And the Shah's like, yeah, I don't need you anymore. I'm in power. You're dead. Yeah. And so these naive college kids, they don't realize that they're playing with fire. Mm-hmm. They think, oh, we'll just be everything free. Once you give up your country to these people, you will never get it back.
Bill Federer with us today here on Crosstalk, and we're opening our phone lines. Our number 800-733-9829 for your questions or brief comment. 1-800-733-9829. And friends, this is going well beyond the political realm. It is much engrossed and infiltrated our educational system. You have seen what's happened on the university campuses across this nation, and friends, it's happening in our lower graded schools as well. I mean, just recently, for instance, in Boston, a school principal actually apologized to the Muslim students because they were offended by a lesson that they had on the Holocaust. This is William Diamond Middle School principal Johnny Cole sent an email apologizing to Arab, Muslim, Palestinian, and Lebanese students who were offended by this mandatory Holocaust lesson. And the question is, since when is teaching historical facts something that requires an apology? And why is the school principal validating outrage over a Holocaust education instead of defending it? And friends, that's where we're at as a nation right now. Bill Federer is with us today, and we're talking about this socialist Islamic wave that it's taking its way across the country. And it's front and center in so many different elections here from across the states and in communities. We'll be back in just 1 minute. This is Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Revolver News, which tends to be a little bit more of a conservative news site, had a headline on June 20th, 2026. Trump's ready to reopen mental institutions, and liberals are furious. They seem to be praising the idea. Well, I want to bring a word of caution, because what one administration does with maybe good intentions can certainly be hijacked by another administration. Now, we do have a lot of people, homeless people in homeless camps, and people on the street that have abuse problems, substance abuse, alcohol, drugs. Some people are folks that suffer with autism and other mental handicaps, and they should be helped. But do we really want the government forcing people into mental hospitals, forcing them like prisoners? No, because it's not a long stretch to be called a domestic terrorist or mentally ill as a Christian or conservative. Think hard, Americans.
Friends, I don't have time to get to the clip today, but the one running for Senate in Texas, Tallarico, has unearthed video here in audio talking about how he's wanting to slash police budgets and slash prison budgets. And friends, this is where so many of this happens. I read the platform at the beginning of the program, and again, that really opens our eyes to this matter. Bill's book on socialism and also his book on America, what America needs to know about the Quran. Each of these books independently available for donation of $20 or more. Reach out to our switchboard at 800-729-9829. We have John calling from Flushing, New York. Hi, John. You're on the air.
Hey, how you doing, man? So I'm just going to say, you guys are right in the fact that socialism doesn't really work anywhere. I mean, FDR tried it, at the end of World War II, and it kind of got shot down, what he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, Nazi Germany, the leading cause of socialism around the planet besides Lenin. It is ridiculous. The Democrats have really gone way off the far end of the spectrum on everything. I live in New York, so I'm dealing with what's going on here in Queens or Brooklyn or whatever with what they're trying to do. But the only benefit is that they're going to do a rent freeze, which would be good, for people like myself. But on a whole, the whole situation here, people are just running out of New York. They're moving out of here as fast as they can, just so you know.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Appreciate your input. Let's also go to the other end of the country. Peter's calling from Burbank, California. Peter, you're on the air.
Yes, my question is this, and I appreciate your guest. So now the question is, where do we go from here? You laid out the problems. You laid what happened in the past. Now, where do we go from that point?
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Bill.
Voting, we're barely getting 20% of Christians to vote, but 100% of Muslims vote.
Yep.
I've actually saw a video where they said it's easy to take over America. Just pull out a map and see where there's low voter turnout and move in there, and the Muslims vote as a block. 100% of them vote. They do not have the concept of one person, one vote. It's our team against their team, our Ummah community. I've seen James O'Keefe-type videos of Muslims sitting around the table in Detroit forging ballots and then having an auction at midnight, and then whoever pays the most, they drop off those ballots at the drop-off box.
Wow.
So it's our team against their team, and yet we're still trying to convince, half the Christians to vote. And it's so what do we do to turn around? Realize that it's not just America that's at stake, it's the entire world. If America goes, they're going to put in their Islamic, globalist, socialist agenda, just like they took over the UN.
Yeah. Let's go to Gene next in Minot, North Dakota. Gene, you're on the air.
Yes, and what came to mind was Barack Hussein Obama and Hillary Clinton and Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, and the impact that had on their lives and then on our country.
Yeah. And Bill, that's something you point out in your book here on socialism too. That Rules for Radicals, that is really front and center in what agenda is afoot here.
Yeah, matter of fact, Saul Alinsky has an acknowledgement in the front of his book to Lucifer. And so how do you get people to give up their freedoms, fear and free stuff? You create a crisis, they panic and give up their freedom, or you get them dependent on the government, and they'll incrementally give up their freedoms to keep the free stuff coming. And that's Saul Alinsky's strategy.
Tom is our next caller in Tomah, Wisconsin. Tom, you're on the air.
Yes, I just heard the list that you read off in the beginning of all the stuff that they're going to be giving away. It reminds me of that Margaret Thatcher thing. Where are they going to come up with the OPM, the other people's money? That's where it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. We've got Matt calling from Ohio. Matt, you're on the air.
Hi. I want to thank you for your program. I love it. I listen to it in Ohio on Clean Air FM.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the governor or the mayor in Ohio, he's an anti-Semitic. He wanted to give away free food. That closed. That way he had free transportation. That closed. It doesn't work. And also, I wanted to comment real quick on the school, the Muslims that are offended in the school because of the truth about what happened to them. Well, if you're offended, I challenge you to search your heart and ask what's bothering you. Anyway, that's all my comment. Thank you. I appreciate your program. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. And Bill, are you astounded at that apology from the principal?
Yeah. It's imagine if the MS-13 gang simply started calling itself a religion. We're like, oh, you're a religion now? Well, I guess we can let you take over neighborhoods. And you can practice your own vigilante justice and have sex-trafficked little girls and blood in, blood out, kill people that leave. And matter of fact, we can teach MS-13 in the public schools. Give your little rooms, and you can wear your clothes, your baggy pants, and your tattoos, and instead of having, burqas and turbans and so forth. And so Islam is, in a sense, a gang dynamic where it's a political system that's also a religious system, but they want to take over. And they do not want to practice our American laws. They want to bring in their Sharia law. And they're happy to work with socialists to do the transition.
Charles is calling from Big Fort, Minnesota. Charles, you're on the air.
Yes. I was wondering what Mr. Federer would think or thinks about Trump dealing with Iran and thinking that he's actually going to get a deal with people.
Okay, we're really not talking on that issue today, but from the standpoint of Islam, we do see the infiltration of Islam there, Bill. So rather than talking about the deal itself, there's where we go in all this is a huge issue. Taqiyya.
So in Islam, they have taqiyya. It's lying, and unless you understand this, they have no concept of a permanent treaty. It's called hudna. It's when you're weak, you make treaties until you get strong enough to regard them. And so I do agree, we are naive to think that they would keep their word.
Yeah, thank you, Charles.
When their whole Islamic history is that, when we made a treaty with the Muslims during the Barbary Pirate War, the Pasha of Tripoli said, write up your treaty and I'll sign it, but as soon as you leave the harbor, it's waste paper.
Yeah. And that's what we're seeing, too. I mean, President Trump says one thing and Iran says, no, we didn't agree to that, and back and forth it goes, and more weeks and months go down the road as well. Bill Federer, our guest today, and friends, again, either of those books, you can find them available, a donation of $20 from Crosstalk, 800-729-9829. Bill's website, AmericanMinute.com. Bill, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Jim.
And friends, keep in mind the importance of understanding of the times, understand where we're at, understand our history past, and the importance of being salt and the importance of being light. God bless you, friends. Thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.